Have you ever wondered what you would do if you could go back to being 20 years old, but with the mind of someone who built a billion-dollar empire? Well, imagine that you are standing in front of me, Andrew Carnegie, not as the tycoon everyone knows, but as the mentor you would have wanted when you were just a young Scottish immigrant with calluses on your hands and dreams bigger than any steamship could carry. And I tell you, if I were 20 years old today, knowing what I know, with the resources you have at your fingertips, I would build a much greater fortune, in less time, with much more impact. Now pay attention, because this is not a lecture. This is a call to action, an awakening, an intimate session of mental reconstruction, because if you want real wealth, the kind that transforms families, builds cities, and makes an impact for generations, you're going to have to burn all your bridges to mediocrity, and start now. Yes, right now, at 20, 22, or even 29, because time is not what you think it is. It's not passing. It's being invested or wasted. And you are at the most powerful point on the exponential curve of your life. At 20, I didn't have access to the internet. You do. I didn't have books at my fingertips. You do. I couldn't talk to entrepreneurs on the other side of the world in real time. You can. And yet, I built a fortune of over $300 billion in today's dollars. Now imagine what you can do with all that and more with what I'm going to give you today. But first, look around you. Everything seems too stable, doesn't it? Courses, jobs, social media, friends who think small, distractions on every screen. But this apparent comfort is exactly what keeps you poor. Modern mediocrity comes disguised as stability. And the first step toward true fortune is to break away from it, because stability is for those who have no ambition. You didn't come into this world to survive. You came to conquer. If I were 20 years old today, I would do 3 things immediately, with iron discipline. First, I would eliminate all distractions. I would cut off social media that doesn't enrich me, friendships that don't challenge me, and habits that don't propel me forward. Second, I would become obsessed with learning how to solve valuable problems, problems that people with money pay well to have solved. Third, I would find a real mentor, someone who is 10, 20 years ahead of me, and I would do whatever it takes to learn from them. I would mop the floors of their company, if necessary, because access to the right mind is worth more than any salary. You need to understand that at your age, the most precious asset is not money. It is time with direction. Because time without direction is poison. With direction, it is leverage. And that leverage can catapult you to a place where 99% of people will never go. But you need to make difficult choices now to live an extraordinary life later. You see, I started working at 13. At 20, I was already a manager. At 30, a partner. At 35, a millionaire. And that, I repeat, without the internet, without digital marketing, without artificial intelligence, but with one obsession: efficiency. I optimized every process. I took care of every penny as if it were a million. I chose my allies as if I were building an army. And you? Are you treating your life like an empire under construction, or like a hobby? The problem with your generation is not a lack of opportunity. It's an excess of distraction. You are being trained to react, not to build. But I will teach you to think like someone who builds bridges, drills through mountains, turns iron into gold, with management, discipline, and vision. And here is the first principle. You need to decide, right now, that your life will not be ordinary. This is a choice, a sacrifice. Because no one builds empires by being normal. Normal people wait for Friday. I built on Mondays. Normal people want comfort. I pursued efficiency. Normal people complain. I solved problems. Do you want to be a millionaire? Great, but understand, you won't be paid for how much you want, but for how much you transform. Fortune will come when you become irreplaceable in something that the market deeply values. And that requires monastic dedication. It requires studying while others sleep, practicing while they are distracted, acting with courage when they freeze. And yes, there will be pain, sacrifice, insecurity, lack of recognition, but all of that is part of the price. Mediocrity also takes a toll, only much higher regret. At 60, what will hurt is not failure. It is having accepted less than you could have been. Now, listen carefully. The next 5 years of your life will determine the next 50. What you do between the ages of 20 and 25 defines your mental, financial, and emotional patterns for the rest of your journey. And you can use those years to plant discipline or reap excuses. If I were in your shoes, I would master the following areas with strategic obsession. Sales, because every empire starts with the ability to generate value and persuade. People management, because no one gets rich alone. Financial control, because every penny well spent today is $1 million tomorrow. Daily reading, because a sharp mind cuts through complex problems. And non-negotiable health, because a weak body will never sustain a powerful mind. You are facing the most decisive decade of your life, and if you think you still have time, you are already losing. Time only works in favor of those who have a plan, those who have discipline, those who build while others dream. And remember, the world does not reward those who start, but those who finish. Your mission is not to test paths. It is to build your own road and pave it with excellence, vision, and relentless execution. The fortune you dream of already exists. It's just waiting for someone who has the courage to deserve it. At the end of this video, I'll show you the exact model I would use to turn my 20 years today into a solid, multi-digit fortune. Now listen with the heart of a builder and the eyes of a strategist. If I were 20 years old today, with the maturity of someone who has built steel mills, cities, and libraries, I would devote the next 5 years to becoming true elite human capital, a resource so valuable that any organization, investor, or society would move to have it around. Because real wealth doesn't start in your pocket, it starts in your mind. And every fortune begins with a decision to become impossible to ignore. But to do that, there is something you need to abandon right now. The rush to make money without first becoming worthy of receiving it. Money flows like a river toward those who know how to manage it with mastery. And the modern world is full of illusory shortcuts, promises of quick riches that don't stand up to the first real challenge. While most people are looking for tricks, I would look for fundamentals, and one of the most solid is this: become exceptional at one core skill. Yes, just one. The one that solves a costly problem for the market. Then scale it as a system. At 20, you don't need 1,000 ideas. You need one idea, executed relentlessly. When I was young, mine was efficiency in steel, transportation, and processing. And because this was valuable to growing cities, I became indispensable. Today, you can do the same with data, persuasion, software, digital business, finance, as long as you become the best, not the second best, the best. The name that comes to mind when that problem needs to be solved. Do you want to grow fast? Then understand what few understand. No one grows alone. The speed of your rise will be proportional to the quality of the people you decide to walk with. And here is the second code of empire building. Choose your allies, as if you were forming an army to cross the desert. Because that's what the early years will be, a desert of loneliness, sacrifice, silence, sweat. And only those with the right soldiers by their side will make it through. At 20, I would look for 3 types of people: mentors who have what I want, allies who share the same vision, and soldiers who are willing to execute with me. And I would do it aggressively, clearly, without fear of appearing bold. I would send messages. I would make myself available. I would deliver value for free, because access to great minds is worth more than any course. A piece of advice from a wise man can save you 20 years of your life. I know, it saved mine. And remember, the weak ask for permission. Builders create their own invitations. If you wait to be chosen, you'll always be behind. I never waited for doors to open, I built them, with iron and ambition. And I want you to start thinking like this, as someone who builds doors where others see walls, where others see obstacles, you will see projects. And where others see crisis, you will see capital in motion. If I were 20 years old today, I would study 3 areas obsessively in parallel. Human psychology, because every business is about understanding people. Sales, because without it, nothing moves. And systems, because that is what makes wealth scalable. I would study at night, apply it during the day, and adjust at dusk. Because knowledge without application is luxury garbage. And application without measurement is waste on a scale. You need to become the scientist of your own empire. Measure, test, adjust, every day. And here's a principle that few have the courage to accept. In the first 5 years, you will work harder than everyone else. You will sleep less, be misunderstood, mocked, even sabotaged. But those who build deep foundations sustain castles for generations. And the world respects those who respect themselves first. So, if you say you're going to wake up at 5 a.m., wake up. If you say you're going to study 2 hours a day, study. If you say you're going to launch a product in 30 days, launch it. Your word is your most precious asset. In the early years, protect it like pure gold. Now, I want you to understand something fundamental. Your mind is a factory, and every day it is producing something. The question is it producing wealth or sabotage? Because the thoughts you cultivate determine the quality of your actions. And I know there will be days when you will doubt. Days when everything seems slow, dark, lonely. On those days, you will need to remember, wealth respects the pace of those who plant with patience and harvest with intelligence. Nothing great is built in a hurry, but everything great is built with intensity. If I were 20 years old today, I would write 3 questions on a piece of paper every day. What did I learn today that brings me closer to my empire? Who did I serve with excellence today? Where am I wasting time that could be capitalized on? These 3 questions, asked with brutal honesty, become a system of daily realignment. And systems, remember, are the secret to empires. Now, I want you to stop for a moment and think. Are you planting a tree or just pulling leaves? Are you building a legacy or just going with the flow? Because most people don't know the difference between working hard and building wealth. Working hard is what slaves did. Building wealth is what free men do. And free men think independently, act strategically, and live with purpose. You need to decide what your specialty in the world will be. What will be your name engraved in a category? Because the world doesn't pay well for generalists. It rewards those who lead a solution, and that leadership doesn't have to wait for age, resume, or permission. It takes clarity, consistency, and courage. The same courage that made me, as a young man, turn down stable jobs and bet on unstable opportunities with unlimited potential. The same courage that made me leave the comfort of a salary to build a steel empire. And the same courage you need now to say, I'm not going to live an ordinary life. And finally, if I were 20 years old today, I would live by an code. Everything I touch improves. Every person I connect with grows. Every decision I make brings me closer to the future I deserve. Because that's what builders do. They don't live for vanity, they live for purpose. And that purpose manifests itself in results. In real transformation, in tangible progress. So now I want to provoke you. Because the right provocation can change destinies. If you had only 5 years to build your fortune, with the resources you have today, what would you do differently tomorrow? I want you to answer in the comments, but not with empty phrases. With real plans. With firm decisions. With the clarity of someone who is tired of surviving and has finally decided to thrive. The time has come to leave theory behind and get on the path to execution. Because dreams without a timeline are delusions. And the fortune you desire will not be the result of positive thinking, but of a battle plan, executed with unwavering discipline. So listen carefully, as if you were receiving a map of an unknown territory, but one full of hidden gold mines, because that is exactly what your youth represents. Fertile ground with hidden riches, waiting for someone who has the courage to explore it with method, not luck. If I were 20 years old today, I would start with an agenda structured around a single goal: to become a man of results, with practical authority in a critical area of the market. That means I would wake up every day with 3 clear fronts to advance: personal development, asset building, and reputation building. On the personal development front, you need to understand that your mind is a machine, and like any machine, it needs calibration, maintenance, and high-octane fuel. And you don't do that by watching short videos, but by immersing yourself in heavy books, real experiences, and conversations with giants. I would read 2 hours a day, religiously. Not just anything. Biographies of builders, books on finance, strategy, leadership, psychology, consumer behavior, and, above all, history, because the patterns of power don't change. They just disguise themselves. And don't think that reading is a hobby. It's preparation. You won't be competing with average people. You'll be competing with trained, ambitious people, many with more resources than you. Your edge will be the depth of your thinking, the clarity of your decisions, and the firmness of your execution. And that only comes with heavy, organized, and internalized knowledge. But reading isn't enough. You have to apply it. That's why, on the second front, building assets, would immediately start a side project, alongside my job or college. Something small, but with potential to scale. It could be a page of original content, a digital product, a paid community, a specialized service, or even a vertical e-commerce business. The key is not to be just another one. You need to have a clear positioning, a specific value proposition, and a replicable customer acquisition process. I wouldn't expect everything to be perfect. I would launch in 30 days. I would readjust in 30, and I would scale in 90, because perfection paralyzes, but speed educates. And in the process, I would learn what no college teaches: how the market really works, how people make decisions, and how money moves in practice. Now, on the third front, building reputation, understand this: in a world where everyone wants visibility, the real power lies in building authority. And authority is built by delivering value before asking for anything in return. That's why I would start documenting my process, not to gain followers, but to attract allies, mentors, and investors. Your journey is the greatest proof that you are on the move. And movement attracts opportunities. Publish ideas, share lessons learned, tell real stories, show vulnerabilities, and above all, demonstrate constant evolution. People respect those who are willing to start small but think big. And here's a principle that changed my life, and can change yours. You don't need many people. You need the right people. A mentor, a partner, an investor, a community. With 4 right people, you can build an empire, as long as you're the 5th visionary with action. That's why I would write a list of 20 names, people who are where I want to be, and I would approach each one with respect, value, and persistence. Yes, some will ignore you, but those who respond will be the foundation for the next 10 years, and I know that because my fortune started with one name, Thomas A. Scott. He gave me my first chance, and I delivered so much value that I became irreplaceable. Do the same. Make yourself impossible to ignore. And now, let's talk about money, because there is a fatal mistake among ambitious young people. The rush to get rich blinds them to the real lever of wealth, accumulated and reinvested capital. At 20, your money is worth more than that of anyone older, because time multiplies capital with a violence that few understand. If I were 20 today, I would live on 30% of my income. I would invest 50%, and I would reinvest the gains. No luxuries, no ostentation. Money that doesn't work gets sick. I would put that capital on 3 fronts: my education, books, courses, mentors, my project traffic, tools, validation, and financial assets, stocks in solid companies, REITs, and global because the game of fortune is won with two weapons, leverage and time. And you have both now. But understand, true financial independence is not when you can stop working. It's when you only work on what matters. When every day of your life is aligned with a mission greater than just paying bills. And that freedom begins when you master your mind, your time, and your habits. That's why I would create a military routine. I would wake up early. I would train my body. I would feed my mind. I would execute the plan. I would study my mistakes. I would be grateful for my victories. I would sleep like someone preparing for the next day's battle. Because fortune is built on routine. Billions are the result of consistency. And now, I want you to think seriously. What are you tolerating in your life that a true builder would never accept? What are you putting off that a millionaire in the making would have done yesterday? What excuses are still seducing you while opportunity passes before your eyes? If you don't confront this now, 10 years from now, you'll be just another frustrated adult with good stories and no achievements. But if you decide to act, if you decide to apply this plan with faith, discipline, and vision, you will be the exception. That name that stands out, that story that inspires, that result that everyone admires, but few understand the price that was paid. Because fortune demands a price. And the price is discipline, courage, and decision. And you, right now, have all of that at your fingertips. You need to understand, once and for all, wealth is a reflection. It reflects who you are inside. A disorganized, reactive, anxious man is incapable of sustaining abundance for long. That's why, if I were 20 years old today, I would devote a brutal amount of time to polishing myself internally with the same intensity I used to build my businesses externally. And here's the point that separates the fortunate from the forgotten: self-control. Without it, even the most intelligent sink. With it, even the average thrive. Do you want to know why many fail, even after starting out well? Because they sabotage themselves. They have emotional outbursts, procrastinate on what they know needs to be done. Live as hostages to distractions, instant gratification, and validation from others. I never built with applause in mind. I built with legacies in mind. And a legacy requires you to become a general of your own mind. That's why, at 20, I would train my self-discipline as if I were training for war. And you are, in fact, at war against distractions, against digital comparison, against the modern narrative that everything needs to be easy and fast. Life is not TikTok. Empires are not built with easy dopamine. They are built with intentional pain, directed effort, conscious sacrifices, and rewards that no one can take away from you. I would start with mastering my schedule. Do you want to know if a man will prosper? Look at his routine. If he wakes up late, gets lost on social media, jumps from task to task, lives for others, ... he's lost before he even starts. But if he starts the day with clarity, executes with focus, and ends with reflection, he's a threat. He's a builder. And builders are rare. You need to protect your time fiercely. I would eliminate unnecessary meetings, limit cell phone use, and create sacred blocks of deep work. Because it is in silence that billion-dollar ideas are born. And it is through relentless execution that they become reality. But focus alone is not enough. You need emotional resilience. Your ability to stay strong when everything seems to be going wrong will be tested many times. Investments that don't pay off, people who betray you, promises that aren't kept, days when nothing makes sense. And there lies the real turning point. Will you continue or give up? Most people give up because they built superficial motivation. Not me, I had purpose. And you need one too. Not a nice purpose to put in your bio, but a real, deep reason that gets you out of bed on tired days. Something that goes beyond money, status, or freedom. Something that stirs your soul, your sense of mission in the world. Find it, nurture it, serve it, and the money will follow. At 20, you need to start writing your philosophy of life. How do you deal with mistakes, with victory, with others, with failure? How do you define success? What is your code? Because if you don't define it, the world will define it for you. And the world, my friend, wants you to consume, obey, accept, and keep quiet. But you were born to lead, to impact, to transform. And here's another uncomfortable truth. You need to learn to say no. Say no to parties that don't lift you up, to friends who pull you down, to habits that weaken your body, to proposals that sabotage your principles. A man who says yes to everything is a slave. One who says no clearly is a master of his own destiny. But inner development doesn't stop there. You need to learn to lead. And leading starts with serving, with listening, with understanding. A leader is not someone who gives orders. It is someone who inspires, who brings out the best in people, who sees potential before it manifests itself, and who demands with love, but with firmness. If I were 20 years old today, I would study the great leaders of history obsessively. Churchill, Lincoln, Mandela, Jobs, not to imitate them, but to understand how they thought, how they acted under pressure, how they inspired crowds. Because an empire without leadership is a castle built on sand, and a weak leader is the silent ruin of any project. And now, we need to talk about one of the greatest forces of construction: practical spirituality. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about connection with purpose, with non-negotiable values, with the source of your vision. You need daily time for introspection, silence, listening, because the most powerful answers in your life will not come from outside. They will come from within. When you silence the external noise, the map will appear. And in this process of inner construction, physical health cannot be neglected. Your body is the machine that executes your plans. You may be brilliant, but if you live tired, inflamed, sedentary, you will not have the energy to achieve what you want. So train, eat well, sleep like a king, take care of your temple. Because your empire begins with you. And here's something no one tells you: there is no true success without peace. Peace with your decisions, with your rhythm, with your conscience. That's why, even in the midst of war, you need to cultivate moments of gratitude, of celebration, of presence. Because the journey needs to be rich, not just the destination. And a man who runs without ever breathing loses the essence of the path. At 20, I made a promise to myself. I will never be a slave to money, but I will master the rules of the game with such skill that money will work for me, not the other way around. Because that is what true freedom represents: the power to live in line with your principles, not your obligations. And I want to leave you with a reminder that transformed my life: everything that is built from within, no one can take away from you. They stole my ideas, yes. They tried to sabotage my business, yes. But they couldn't steal my vision, nor my discipline, nor my leadership. And because of that, I came back stronger. Always, that is the strength I want you to build now. Internal, silent, unshakable, a clear mind, an aligned heart, a strong body, a peaceful soul. With that, my young friend, you are already rich. The rest is just multiplication. If I were 20 years old today, with a sharp mind and self-control already in place, I would plan the next 30 years of my life as if I were designing a transcontinental railroad, with precision, with vision, with solid pillars, and with interconnected goals. Because every empire that stands the test of time begins with a plan that spans decades. And most people, unfortunately, barely know what they will do next week. You will not be that majority. At 20, the game is not to make money fast. It is to build a machine that generates continuous, sustainable, and progressive wealth. This means you need to think in 10-year blocks. The first 10 for training and accumulation, the second 10 for multiplication and expansion, and the last 10 for philanthropy and perpetuation. This is the journey of a true builder. Someone who isn't just here to accumulate assets, but to become an agent of transformation. In the first cycle, from 20 to 30, your focus needs to be brutal. Learn, accumulate, make mistakes quickly, build a reputation, and form your first capital base. Here, you test models, find strategic allies, and above all, eliminate any distractions that aren't aligned with your 30-year plan. You must live with almost military discipline, because the more serious you are now, the freer you will be later. In the second cycle, from 30 to 40, the game changes. Here, you stop selling time and start scaling processes. You create companies, systems, delegate with mastery, train leaders, protect your time, and increase your impact. You build not just a business, but an ecosystem. Your intelligence begins to be multiplied through other people. And this is where you leave the builder phase and enter the multiplier phase. And in the third cycle, from 40 to 50, you become what few manage to be: a patron, a strategic donor, a mentor, a name that leaves a mark not only in the coffers, but in people's consciousness. You invest in causes, train successors, build institutions. You become part of the invisible fabric that sustains the progress of future generations. And that is true fortune. Not what you leave in the bank, but what you plant in the minds and hearts of those who come after you. But it all starts today. With the first $1,000 you decide to invest and not spend. With the project you start and commit to sustaining for years, not weeks. With the relationships you build based on principles, not convenience. Do you understand? Everything that is lasting is built over time and with intention. Nothing that lasts is the result of chance. If I were 20 years old today, I would choose an industry to master. I would study its fundamentals, its pains, its opportunities in depth. I wouldn't jump from idea to idea. I would choose an industry and become an authority within it. Because millionaires are generalists, but billionaires are experts in one arena, and they know how to scale that globally. Do you want to build something great? Then you need to learn to think like a strategist, not an operator. And that means making decisions based on leverage. Every step needs to move mountains. Every choice needs to have a domino effect. I didn't make decisions thinking only about the next month. I thought about how each of my actions would fit into building a value chain that would connect for decades. Do the same, and remember this: greatness isn't about doing everything. It's about doing a few things with excellence. I was never the most talented, but I was the most disciplined. And I knew how to choose the best people. Delegating isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of intelligence. You need to build teams. People who are better than you in specific areas. And to do that, you need to put your ego aside. Those who want to be heroes work alone. Those who want to be legends build armies. And along the way, you need to protect your most valuable asset, your energy. Because there will be fatigue, there will be doubt, there will be temptation to turn back. But an empire builder knows that wear and tear is part of the process. That's why they manage their energy like a banker manages gold. They choose their battles, their diet, their sleep, their environments. They live in a state of readiness, not reactivity. And I want to tell you something that few people tell you. You need to learn how to lose. Yes, lose. Lose money, lose opportunities, lose people, because loss is the greatest school for all great builders. It was through losing that I learned to choose better. It was through being betrayed that I learned to select allies. It was through failing that I learned to win. And today, I tell you firmly, do not fear failure. Fear not learning from it. If I were 20 years old today, I would document every step, not for Instagram, but for my own evolution. I would keep journals, reflections, monthly reviews, because if you don't measure, you don't improve. And if you don't improve, you die slowly. You need to become a scientist of your own progress. And that requires you to look at your life as a system that can be optimized. And finally, I would understand that freedom is not the absence of work. Freedom is working on what matters, with whom matters, at the pace you choose. Freedom is the consequence of a life lived with strategy and courage. And that freedom, my young friend, is right in front of you. All you need is the courage not to trade your principles for temporary comfort. Now that we are walking together on this road of inner construction, external strategy, and long-term vision, I want you to stop and look at yourself. Look honestly, with courage. Because there is a moment in every man's life when he must decide who he will be from now on. Not based on what he has lived so far, but based on what he is willing to build. And that moment is now. If I were 20 years old today, this would be the exact moment when I would make the vow that changed my own life. I would never again accept a mediocre version of myself. It doesn't matter where I came from. It doesn't matter what I lacked. From today on, I would become the architect of my empire. And that would require everything from me. My focus, my discipline, my silence, my audacity, and, above all, my total dedication to a purpose greater than myself. But here's the point that separates those who dream from those who achieve non-negotiable responsibility. Those who build fortunes don't blame, don't outsource, don't explain themselves. They take responsibility for everything. The mistakes, the falls, the delays, because they know that control is in the hands of those who take responsibility. And when you become the master of your own destiny, the entire universe begins to respect you. At 20, you have something that I, at 50, would give anything to have back: time. And most people waste this asset as if it were infinite. They live to please, to appear, to follow the flow. But the great ones, the ones who really leave their mark, don't follow the flow. They create ripples. And to do that, you need to stop trying to be accepted and start being undeniable. Do you want to be heard? Do something so extraordinary that the world can't ignore you. Do you want to be respected? Honor your word until it becomes your armor. Do you want to be remembered? Live so intensely, so disciplined, so generously, that even when you're gone, your name continues to multiply lives. Because that's the real game. Fortune is just the visible result. But what really counts is the invisible. The transformation you create, the jobs you create, the families you lift out of poverty, the ideas you finance, the institutions you build, the history you write. If I were 20 years old today, I would live as if every decision I made had the power to affect 1,000 lives. Because, in fact, it does. A yes said today can start a company, a no can prevent a ruin. A daily habit can change an entire generation. And that awareness, that sense of mission, is what separates the worker from the founder, the spectator from the protagonist, the ordinary from the unforgettable. Do you think I built steel mills just for profit? No, I built them because I understood that a country's infrastructure defines its future. And today, you have an even more powerful mission: to build the mental, emotional, and strategic infrastructure of the new generation. You have the power to influence, with examples, with results, with attitude, and it all starts with what you decide to do tomorrow morning. Are you going to wake up like everyone else? Are you going to pick up your cell phone and be swallowed up by the world of distractions? Or are you going to wake up like a general, with clarity, with strength, with direction? Because, young man, your fortune does not begin with a great idea. It begins with a great decision. And that decision is to live with uncompromising purpose. And if you're asking yourself, can I do it? Let me answer with the authority of someone who turned poverty into billions. Yes, you can. As long as you're willing to pay the price. As long as you don't bow down to excuses. As long as you silence the voices that try to keep you small. As long as you choose every day not for what you feel, but for what you want to build, and the reward, it comes. It comes in the form of respect, freedom, impact, a life you look at with pride in the mirror, and, above all, a peace that only those who have lived for something greater than themselves can experience. So get up with courage. build with strategy, live with greatness. And above all, never forget, you didn't come into this world to watch history, you came to write it. Now, if this journey we've outlined here has touched you, if any part of this vision has awakened something inside you, then I ask you, share this video with those who need to wake up, with those who need to decide, with those who deserve to build. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because here, on this channel, I will be here every day, mentoring you with the intensity and clarity of someone who has built empires and believes that you can go even further. Not out of ego, but out of mission. Live like someone who carries a legacy, build like someone who is in a hurry to serve, and prosper like someone who has no choice but greatness. Your empire starts now.